Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description.
Twilight was slowly but surely falling on the shinobi village, the village hidden in the foliage, or as it is also called, Konoha. The sun had already hidden behind the horizon, and its warm rays could not warm the cooling earth. Grasshoppers were humming their cheerful song in the grass, and the trills of a nightingale could be heard from the treetops. All living things were getting ready for sleep, and there were practically no people on the streets. A small, fair-haired child, who looked to be about 8 years old, wandered aimlessly through the streets, constantly looking around and listening to something. Why was a small child not at home, but wandering through the dark streets? This boy had no family, or rather, his parents died 8 years ago when Konoha was attacked by a terrible monster, the most powerful Bijou, the nine-tailed demon fox. That night, the fourth Hokage, having given his life, used a sealing technique, locking the monster in the body of Naruto. That was the name of this boy, becoming a hero. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, the unfortunate child did not know that he was a new vessel for the fox, so he sincerely did not understand the hostile attitude of adults towards him and tried his best to attract attention to himself, to show that he was also worth something. But his methods of showing himself did not give him anything except new insults and, often, bruises. That night Naruto decided to play pranks again, hoping that his new masterpiece would be appreciated. The kid was holding a small jar of green paint in his hands, and the boy's clear blue eyes were shining with mischief. It was clear that he had something not very good in mind. After waiting for a passing cloud to hide the moon, the child, smiling slyly, ran down the street, stopping at a small stall, the owner of which was already resting peacefully at home. Looking around and making sure that no one was watching him, the blonde dipped his brush in paint and, sticking out the tip of his tongue, diligently began to decorate the walls of the stall, drawing there everything that his boundless imagination suggested to him. The reeds were rustling, YK, the trees were drooling, and the night was so warm, YK, it was, humming this song. 5 jounin crawled out from behind some house, staggering and stumbling at every step. 3 of them were holding bottles of sake in their hands, the contents of which were barely splashing at the very bottom. The jonins were completely drunk and were now looking for a way to show off in front of each other. At that moment, Naruto, hearing voices approaching him, decided to run. If only he had stayed where he was and hid. Unfortunately, the boy ran, attracting the attention of the drunk ninja, who quickly recognized the street kid. "Hey, guys, isn't this, YK, that one?" "YK, well, isn't that demon, YK?" one of the jonins asked, pointing his finger at a child running past. "Yes, YK, him. That bastard. Because of that, YK, demon, my little brother died. I'll kill him." The man roared and, somehow moving his stumbling legs, headed towards the running boy. The blonde, realizing that he had been discovered and was apparently going to be beaten, jumped onto the roof, from which he jumped to the next street. The boy ran fast, and his legs almost never let him down, but today, luck seemed to have decided to turn away from the little Jinchuriki. The child did not notice a protruding stone and, tripping over it, plowed the ground with his nose. A few seconds later, the same 5 jonin who had stumbled upon him after a successful party landed near Naruto. Without waiting for the boy to get to his feet, the adult placed his foot on his tiny back, pinning the unfortunate child to the ground. The baby whined in pain, causing the jonin to laugh happily. "You, demon, YK, listen here, YK, it's time to pay the bills. YK. I haven't forgotten what you did yet." Pressing harder on the fragile body with his foot, the jonin growled threateningly and, grabbing the boy by the hair and putting him on his feet, he punched the child's face with all his might. Tears welled up in the little blonde's eyes, and his entire tiny body trembled from the effort to hold back a cry of pain and not to cry. The drunks didn't seem to like it and they surrounded the blonde, started kicking him and shouting threats and insults. Naruto endured as long as he could, but when there was no more living space left on his body, he burst into loud sobs. The jonins recoiled in surprise, but quickly came to their senses. The little Jinchuriki had enough of these few seconds to crawl away from his tormentors and somehow get to his feet. Having spat out several clots of blood on the ground, Naruto made a seal with trembling hands, frantically remembering how the academy teacher talked about illusory clones. Of course, he didn't succeed. Firstly, because he either missed most of his classes or slept. And secondly, because they had only gone through the cloning technique in theory, there was no practice yet. Realizing that the boy, no matter how hard he tried, would not be able to create even a basic technique, the Jonins became even more cheerful. After exchanging glances, the men nodded and began to form seals with great speed. Element of fire. Element of wind. Element of earth. Element of lightning. Element of water. Almost simultaneously, the men screamed, not allowing them to make out the names of the techniques. Naruto's eyes widened in horror as the explosive mixture of all 5 elements was directed at him. The boy put his hands forward and closed his eyes. There were seconds left before the collision with the techniques. 4, 3, 2, 1, the blonde man shrank, having already said goodbye to life, when suddenly the techniques united and, shining with unprecedented colors, swirled around the child. After the haze from the unprecedented combination of techniques dissipated, only one small blonde child remained on the street. Naruto, still in a state of shock, looked around in an attempt to spot his offenders, but they were nowhere to be seen. Having somehow calmed down, the child slid down the wall, burying his head in his torn knees. Bitter tears rolled down the boy's cheeks, and one single question was spinning in his head: why? Why does everyone hate me and call me a demon? Deep in thought, Naruto carefully rubbed his knees and arms, trying to stop the bleeding and ease the pain. Suddenly, he heard footsteps and, pressing himself against the wall, tried to blend in with the world around him. The footsteps grew louder and louder, and Naruto prayed to all the gods that he would not be noticed. It seemed that fate had decided to take pity on the boy this time, and the man passed by without noticing the cowering child. But the child looked at the man very well, wiping his tear-stained eyes several times, wanting to make sure that all this was real. The man who passed by was dressed in a normal Jonin uniform, but over it he wore a snow-white cloak with flames on the edging, and on the back, in large red letters, was the kanji, which meant 4th shadow of fire, or 4th Hokage. Yoyandame Hokage? The blonde couldn't suppress a surprised cry, causing the man to turn around. Yoyandame Hokage? Naruto stammered in shock, looking at the man who had turned around with his tear-stained eyes. The adult's blue eyes met the same ones, only small and swollen from long tears. There was an awkward pause outside. The older blonde couldn't understand what kind of parents would let a small child wander the streets at night, and the child was puzzled as to why the dead 4th Hokage had suddenly appeared in Konoha. Naruto frowned, trying to force his brain to work and find an explanation for such a strange phenomenon. The explanation came soon enough. Since the 4th Hokage had died long ago, he couldn't stand here and look at him now, therefore this. Pointing his finger at the 4th, who recoiled from surprise and crawling towards the wall, Naruto screamed hysterically, shaking his head from side to side, hoping to drive away the ghost. Don't come near me. I won't do it anymore. I don't want to die. Shielding himself with his hands in front of him in a protective gesture. The little blonde screamed at the man who had already recovered from the shock and was now approaching him. The Hokage was confused for a second by the child's statement, but attributed it to an incomprehensible fear and, carefully, so as not to frighten the boy even more, approached and sat down next to him, thus finding himself on the same level as him. Shoo, baby, everything is fine, no one is going to harm you, much less kill you, everything is fine, the blonde whispered, slowly bringing his hand to the terrified child. At the very last moment, Naruto pulled back and muttered something completely surprising and incomprehensible. But you. The 4th Hokage has been dead for a long time, which means you are a ghost. I don't like ghosts, I'm afraid of them. Tears began to flow down the boy's cheeks with renewed vigor. No, kid, I haven't died yet, and I don't plan to. Here, the man extended his hand to the blonde, you can see for yourself that I'm a living person. Naruto answered him with a moment of silence, after which he slowly and carefully, as if afraid of being disappointed and getting hit, extended his hand. The small palm touched the adult's hand, and the boy froze. It was warm. Therefore, the Yondaime Hokage was not a ghost. Naruto had nothing to fear, nothing threatened him. The thought that it was he who might have died did not even cross his little head, and the baby smiled happily, wiping the tears still running down his cheeks with the sleeve of his torn shirt. "By the way, my name is Minato Namikaze, and what is your name? I haven't seen you in Konoha before?" The blonde asked the boy in a calm, curious voice, giving him a gentle smile. "Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, but everyone calls me a demon and constantly beats me or looks at me with disdain." "I don't understand why," the kid muttered resentfully, looking away from the surprised face of the fourth with his blue eyes. "Really? Is that all? Is that why you're in this state?" Receiving an affirmative nod from the child, Minato thought, "What did you do that made them treat you like this?" In response, Naruto just shrugged and quietly sobbed, remembering the happy moments of his short life. "Well, okay," the fourth said, more for himself than for the boy, and, taking his strange acquaintance by the hand, asked, "Will you be able to walk? You need to be shown to the doctors, you're covered in blood." The kid's eyes widened at this harmless statement and he shook his head, expressing his disagreement. Minato ignored this and tried to force the child to stand up, to which he received only stubborn resistance and some sound similar to suppressed crying. Deciding that he would definitely sort out all the oddities associated with Naruto, the blonde picked up the resisting child and, throwing him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, carried him to the hospital. 5 drunk, not so drunk anymore, Jonin stared in a stupor at the empty space where the small, bleeding from numerous cuts and bruises Jinchuriki used to be. After the hellish combination of elemental techniques that the men used to take revenge on the demon, a 5-colored glow in the shape of a funnel appeared around the boy. Now that the light dissipated and the dust settled, in the place of the boy, scarlet chakra hovered in the air, emitting a furious wave of bloodlust. This chakra undoubtedly belonged to the Kyubi no Yoko, previously sealed in the body of a defenseless child. Now that the boy was gone, there was nothing to restrain the bloodthirsty demon, and with each passing minute, he gradually assumed his usual form of a giant 9-tailed fox. "What have we done? This boy was holding back the 9-tailed beast, and we killed him." One of the jonin who participated in the exorcism of the demon screamed in horror. Finally, the fox fully recovered and, letting out a satisfied roar, brought his weight down on Konoha with all 4 paws, destroying houses and stepping with his huge paw on the street where drunk jonins had been having fun 5 minutes ago. All that was left of the bad guys was blood smeared on the ground and pieces of torn uniforms. Panic broke out in the village, just like 8 years ago. It was impossible to tell where an adult was, where a child was, where the dead were, where the living. People, like ants in the rain, ran out into the street, cried, tried to find their children among the running crowd, dodging the collapsing walls of buildings. All around, one could hear children crying, screams for help and endless questions. What happened to the Jinchuriki? Did he go crazy? No. He disappeared. The boy is nowhere to be seen. The 4th Hokage died. Who will stop the demon now? What will happen now? What to do? Damn. You should have protected the boy, not been angry with him, Naruto. Forgive me, please, come back. Yes, people never appreciate what they have, and as soon as this something disappears, they start crying, asking for forgiveness and begging for it to come back. But the boy will not return to this world. He ended up in a place very different from this one, and he does not want to relive all those horrors again. In Konoha, where Naruto was transported and where the 4th is alive. Minato Namikaze sat on a small chair next to the bed, where the little foundling was resting, sweetly snoring. On the way to the hospital, the boy, tired from the events of a difficult night and warmed up on Minato's shoulder, stopped resisting and plunged into the world of Morpheus, thanks to which the doctors were able to examine him normally and provide first aid. The unfortunate child had 3 broken ribs, a broken kidney, a dislocated ankle, and multiple hematomas were found all over his small body. Konoha doctors had never seen such injuries found in an 8-year-old child. Now little Naruto was resting in a hospital room, a drip line was running from his little hand, and bandages decorated almost his entire body. Minato Namikaze was sitting next to the boy and couldn't take his eyes off him. The child seemed so beaten down, helpless, and in appearance strongly resembled Namikaze. The 4th Hokage looked closely at the blonde, and all sorts of thoughts were spinning in his head. Could this unfortunate kid be a spy for another village? Reason told him that anything was possible, but Minato flatly refused to believe it. Why did the child call himself Uzumaki? After all, this clan had long been exterminated and only Kushina, the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed and Minato's wife, had the honor of bearing this surname. What did the kid mean when he said that everyone hated him, beat him and called him a demon? What kind of bastards inflicted such injuries on an 8-year-old child, and how could the kid even move in such a state, if he wasn't a spy, which Minato was sure of with all his heart? Then why had he, Minato, never seen him in Konoha? And finally, why the hell was the kid scared of him and called him a ghost? Namake's head was currently full of questions and no answers. But he wouldn't be the fourth Hokage if he couldn't find an explanation for everything that had happened. After all, the important thing at the moment was for Naruto to recover, and then he could ask the child and, having found out something important and interesting, find answers to countless questions. The fourth Hokage's head was now full of questions and no answers. He sighed and looked at the sleeping boy for the 100th time, pressing his fingers to his temples, trying to force his brain to work and finally explain the series of all the incomprehensible phenomena. Why demon? Why ghost? Why Uzumaki? Wait, but really, why Uzumaki? As far as Minato remembered, this entire powerful clan, based on sealing techniques, was destroyed almost immediately after Kushina moved. That is, she was forced to move to Konoha and, if the blonde's memory did not fail him, the distinguishing feature of this clan was red, or rather, the color of ripe cherries, hair. But this boy was blonde, so what? Did this fact mean that the child was lying? Minato was not sure. The blonde's train of thought was interrupted by the creaking of the door opening. Turning his head, Namake saw a young nurse shifting unsteadily from one foot to the other. Sorry, Hokage-sama, but visiting hours are over. Could you please leave the room? A little. The girl asked hesitantly, for which she received a gentle, slightly sad, smile from the blonde. Okay, I'll leave now, Minato said, reluctantly getting up from his chair and heading for the door. Oh, and before I forget, tell the head doctor to take the boy's blood to check for the presence of Uzumaki clan genes in it. My wife will come as soon as she can. The nurse nodded and, casting a shy glance at the Hokage, headed to the next room. Tadaima. I'm home. Minato shouted, crossing the threshold of a small mansion and closing the door behind him. The next second, he felt an incredibly dark aura and a thirst for blood. Bending down, the blonde at the very last moment dodged a frying pan flying at him at the speed of sound. The aluminum kitchen utensil hit the steel door hard and, making a light creaking sound, fell to the floor. Damn it. I was so busy thinking about Naruto that I didn't tell Kushina at all that I would be back late. Closer to the morning, anyway. Panicked thoughts flashed through the blonde's head. Namikaze-e. An angry roar was heard, and an enraged scarlet-haired girl came out of the kitchen. Her long hair stood on end and swayed menacingly, her eyes flashed lightning, and her hand was clutching another frying pan. The blonde swallowed nervously, realizing that his wife would hardly listen to his explanations. Rather, she would simply kill him, that's all. Kushina, hello, honey. The Hokage put his hands forward, hoping to somehow protect himself and stay alive. Where have you been hanging out all night? Have you looked at your watch lately? The scarlet-haired girl squeezed the handle of the frying pan, making it clear that if Minato didn't find a good reason, then his life, full of colors and exciting moments, would be cut short forever. Sunshine, I'll explain everything now. The Hokage smiled nervously. You see, I was just walking home, but in one of the alleys an 8-year-old boy, whom I had never seen before, called out to me. The kid was covered in blood and was crying uncontrollably. When I approached him, and he told his wife the whole story, starting from how he met Naruto and ending with a request to go to the hospital and give blood for comparison. Kushina, whose anger had disappeared without a trace and whose face now showed only surprise and curiosity, nodded understandingly and smiled. Okay, I'll go to the clinic tomorrow, or rather, today. But first you'll go to the kitchen and eat, after which we'll go to bed. Here she yawned sweetly and rubbed her eyes. There's an hour left until dawn. I need to at least get some sleep. The girl straightened her nightgown and, beckoning her husband to follow her, went to the kitchen, where a pot of food stood, covered with a lid and wrapped in all sorts of towels, waiting for Minato to return. Some time later. Delicious. Thank you, Sunshine, you're the best. Having finished his meal, the fourth Hokage smiled contentedly. His wife did not answer. Kushina, supporting her head with her hand and leaning her elbows on the table, closed her eyes and snored sweetly. She's so exhausted today. She was still waiting for me, worried. I wonder if she ate anything herself? Minato carefully kissed his wife on the forehead and, picking her up in his arms, went to the bedroom with a gentle, loving smile. Yo! Tsunade-sama. The scarlet-haired girl greeted him, happily raising her hand and smiling from ear to ear, entering the head doctor's office. Yo, Kushina. You finally came, knowing your hatred of needles, it's quite surprising. The busty blonde in a white coat said with a smile, who, in addition to working as the head doctor at the Konoha hospital, was also the personal doctor of the 4th Hokage's family. Brrr. Don't remind me why I'm here, Tsunade-sama. The girl shuddered and smiled. Although I hate such procedures, Minato asked me to do this, and I simply cannot refuse him. Besides, if this boy Minato told me about is really Uzumaki, this will allow us to solve many of the lingering problems. You mean the nine-tailed one? The blonde inquired and, having received an affirmative nod from the patient, sighed. He's still just a child, wouldn't it be too cruel? Even you were older then. Well, that's true, the girl said uncertainly, but quickly recovered, because the guys of our clan were such cowards and only put the seal on girls. Every time it was time to give birth, the nine-tailed fox tried to break free. I don't want Konoha to suffer, so I'm looking for someone to whom I can trust this power and I won't have to worry about giving birth. Kushina said and added very quietly, Minato and I, we really want a child, but because of this thing inside me, we're afraid to do it, because the fox won't miss the opportunity to get out, and there's no guarantee that Minato will be able to contain it. So you decided to use an innocent child as a vessel? The doctor asked, raising an eyebrow. I don't know. I don't want to make a child like me, but I also want to finally become a mother. Minato and I will never abandon this boy, in any case. I know what it's like to be a demon carrier. At the end of her explanation, Kushina's voice trembled, and she covered her face with her hands. Well, in any case, we don't know yet whether the boy is Uzumaki. Okay, give me your hand, the blonde demanded with a smile, taking a syringe, a tourniquet and alcohol from the nightstand. Kushina turned pale and, squinting her eyes, as she had once long ago in childhood, extended her hand. See, it doesn't hurt at all, and you were so scared. A good-natured laugh was heard from behind the open door. The 4th Hokage's wife came out of the head doctor's office, smiling and clutching a cotton pad resting on her vein. Haha, I'll probably never get used to it. I've donated blood so many times, but the feeling of fear that it will hurt doesn't go away. Kushina laughed and, thanking Tsunade for the work she had done, headed to room number 311, in which, as Tsunade reported, that same Naruto was supposed to be. 308, 309, 310, and here is room number 311, let's see. Namikaze carefully opened the door and saw an empty room. That's strange, I'm sure Tsunade-sama said number 311, no? Where is this Naruto then? Kushina said in surprise, walking into the room in search of the boy. Then she noticed that the window was slightly open and, wondering where an 8-year-old injured child could have gone, looked out into the street. The next moment, Kushina felt some kind of liquid on her hand and brought it to her face to see a small scarlet drop, suspiciously similar to blood. Oh, no. Tsunade-sama. The scarlet-haired girl quickly ran out of the room, hoping that it was not too late. Naruto, the door to the ward opened slightly, and a pretty young woman appeared on the threshold, whose scarlet hair reached her ankles. Strange. Where is this boy? She said in surprise, looking around the empty ward. Here she noticed that the window was slightly open and, wondering where the 8-year-old wounded child could have gone, she looked out into the street, leaning her elbows on the windowsill. The next moment, Kushina felt her palm touch something wet, viscous, and slightly warm. Raising her hand, the 4th Hokage's wife saw a small red spot on her palm, suspiciously similar to blood. Having carefully examined the small ward in which the boy should have been, the girl discovered several more blood stains leading from the bed to the windowsill. Her brain told her that there were two options in this situation: someone really needed the child Minato had found, or the boy didn't like something / got scared / needed to go somewhere, and he ran away from the hospital. According to Tsunade, in such a state the child would not even be able to move normally for a long time, which meant that the idea of escaping was out of the question. Tsunade-sama. The scarlet-haired girl quickly ran out of the room, hoping that it was not too late. A small blonde child, who looked to be about 7 or 8 years old, leaned against the walls of houses and held his chest with his hand, trudging with a confused step along the back streets, where almost no sunlight penetrated. Naruto understood perfectly well that if he met one of the adults who particularly hated him, he would end up in the hospital again if he did not go to the next world. The blonde sighed quietly and squeezed the bloody bandages on his chest with his fingers, trying to stop the bleeding from the open wound. Naruto's POV. I opened my eyes and didn't immediately realize where I was. What the hell had happened to me this time? The last thing I remembered was the fourth Hokage throwing me over his shoulder and carrying me to the hospital, where I was apparently now. But wait, the fourth Hokage? How? He died, how many? Oh, 8 years ago. Shit, what happened? Okay, Naruto, calm down and remember what happened last night. Well, I decided to play a little joke on the souvenir seller, because the day before yesterday, when I was looking at animal masks, this man pushed me, yelled at me, called me a demon and threw a fox mask at me. Yeah, that was so offensive. I didn't do anything, I was just looking. Deciding to annoy him a little and slightly spoil his shop, I got out a can of blue-green paint and, waiting for nightfall, began to paint his shop. Haha, it would be funny to see his reaction in the morning. True, after this, I will most likely be taken to Old Man Third again, but at least these adults will remember me for a long time and, perhaps, will stop picking on me. Okay, I was thinking about something. I had almost finished my harmless prank, when suddenly 5 drunk men crawled out from around the corner. They were staggering at every step and humming a song about some reeds, I think. Deciding not to catch their eye, I ran home. Unfortunately for me, these adults noticed me and, throwing out the now so familiar demon, ran after me. Jumping from one roof to another, I slipped and fell to the ground. Painfully. These men appeared in front of me in the blink of an eye and, breathing fumes and shouting all sorts of bad words and curses at me, pinned me to the ground with their feet and started kicking. I had already gotten used to this attitude and learned not to scream, despite the unbearable pain. However, these adults were especially cruel, and I could not suppress the cries of pain, causing them to laugh joyfully. When they were distracted by something, I tried to run away, but they quickly surrounded me and started making seals. Stop. They wanted to kill me using a combination of elemental techniques, but instead of pain I saw a white light, which soon sparkled with all the colors of the rainbow. How beautiful it was, so many colors. When the effect of the technique ended, there were no uncles around, but the fourth Hokage walked past, as if he had not died. I remember that I could not resist screaming, to which he turned around and came up to me. I do not remember what exactly he asked me, but it ended with him picking me up in his arms and carrying me, as he said, to the Konoha hospital. Well, now everything falls into place. Those jonins simply used some kind of genjutsu technique. They probably expected the fourth to kill me, or that I would go crazy and be killed. In any case, everything that happened was a lie. I'm still Uzumaki Naruto, I still live in Konoha, the fourth Hokage is still dead, and I'm still hated by my home village, well, except for Old Man Third, Iruka-sensei and the ramen seller, Old Man Tucci and his daughter I am. Oh, since I got into genjutsu, it means my body was lying on the street, and someone decided to take me to the hospital. Thanks to that person, of course, but I can't stand the smell of medicine, injections, and this stupid hospital gown that just tries to come apart in the most delicate places. So, it won't be possible to leave the hospital unnoticed, so I need to escape through the window. No sooner said than done. I unhooked the 4 from my arm and, somehow getting to my feet, wandered to the window. Unfortunately, the moment I tried to get out of bed, the wound on my chest opened up and the bandages turned red. Deciding not to waste time, since all my injuries heal like a dog, I climbed out the window and ran, or rather, trudged, to my favorite dorm. End POV Naruto. Minato sat in his office, staring at the stack of reports and various documents that had piled up on his desk. This was one of the biggest downsides to being Hokage, as the piles of reports were growing daily and it was impossible to clear them all out in one day. Minato sighed and, having told the mountain of paperwork everything he thought about it, made a seal. There was a lazy pop, and 3 more Minatos appeared in the Hokage's office. The clones looked at the original with genuine hatred and, muttering something under their breath about the exploitation of labor, began to sort through the mountains of paper. Minato grinned triumphantly and closed his eyes, putting his feet on the desk. A few minutes later, the door to the Hokage's office opened without knocking, and the same young nurse who asked him to leave Naruto's room appeared on the threshold. "Hokage-sama." The girl cried out excitedly, and Minato managed to take on the appearance of a working man at the last moment. "Hokage-sama. That boy you brought to the hospital yesterday, he disappeared." "What do you mean, he disappeared?" The blonde slapped his palm on the table, greatly frightening the nurse, because it was very rare to see the 4th Hokage angry or irritated and, as a rule, it did not bode well. Well, your wife came to the hospital to donate blood, after which she decided to look into the boy's room, but when she opened the door there was no one in the room, and there were small drops of blood on the floor. "Most likely, one of the baby's many wounds opened up," the girl rattled off, not wanting to anger the Hokage even more. Minato tiredly rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Oh my god. Okay, I'll send someone to search, and you tell Tsunade not to delay with the test." "They took Naruto's blood, right?" Namikaze ordered, having received a nod from the nurse, and, having let the girl go, looked out the window. "Naruto, who are you?" Minato thought and, giving the shadow clones the task of continuing to sort through the reports, disappeared from the office in a yellow flash. Naruto approached the dorm and stopped at the door to his small room. Sighing, the boy pulled the handle and was surprised when the door did not budge, because he almost never bothered to lock it, leaving it open. Therefore, such an unexpected phenomenon somewhat surprised the blonde. Strange. The boy thought and walked around the dorm, going out onto a tiny balcony, from which it was easy to get into the apartment. The kid quickly climbed onto the balcony railing and pushed the door inside the house. The picture that appeared before him stunned the little blonde. The room was absolutely clean, not a single can of eaten ramen or sour milk, but that was not what surprised the child so much. The room was full of various furniture and a TV, which Naruto had never had before. The blue eyes widened in shock, after which they fixed their gaze on the mirror standing next to the dresser. Here Naruto was completely confused, because 6 of those familiar stripes that had decorated his cheeks since birth had disappeared. While the baby stood in a stupor in the middle of the room, looking at his reflection in the mirror, a busta lady appeared on the threshold, clearly having come out of the shower, since her body and hair were decorated with towels. "Hey! Who are you and what are you doing here?" the lady screamed, throwing a comb at the frightened child. Sorry, ma'am, but I actually live here," Naruto shouted back, dodging various projectiles, which angered the woman even more. "I live here." The lady got furious, picking up a broom and throwing Naruto out into the street. Once outside his home, the boy blinked in confusion and crouched down, resting his head on his knees. Confusion soon gave way to righteous anger, for this small room was the only place Naruto could feel safe. Now some woman decided to take away the last thing from him. "This is my room. And I won't give it to you, auntie. Get out of there!" Naruto shouted at the top of his lungs, attracting the attention of passers-by. The woman's reaction was instantaneous, and within seconds the balcony door opened, revealing a lady red with anger. "This is my apartment. I live here. Understand?" she yelled threateningly, clearly clutching the rolling pin in her hands. "And if you start to make trouble, I'll tell Master Hokage everything. Then we'll see. I don't think your parents will like this." Naruto flinched as if he had been hit, because everyone in Konoha knew that he was an orphan. However, the boy quickly recovered and, holding back the tears of pain that had welled up in his eyes, confidently stamped his foot. "Let's go. Old Man Third will support me 100%. The lady blinked in surprise at the boy's statement, after which she looked at the little boy with apprehension. "Hey, kid, you didn't escape from a mental hospital by any chance, did you? What time period do you live in? Konoha has been ruled by the 4th for how many years now? You were the one who escaped from the hospital. The 4th died 8 years ago, and now the Hokage has become the 3rd again." Naruto did not remain in debt, but now his voice had lost its former confidence. The silhouette of the dead Hokage flashed before the boy's eyes again, his gentle eyes and the voice promising that everything would be fine. Was this not an illusion, or what? Naruto bit his lip nervously, thinking about the latest developments. Naruto. A slightly angry voice called out to him, and the kid turned around to see Minato jumping across the rooftops towards him. Minato's POV. Excuse me, have you seen a 7 or 8-year-old kid with golden hair and blue eyes? Was he still covered in bandages and in a hospital gown? No? I see, sorry to bother you, damn it, Naruto, where did you go? I've already questioned almost half of Konoha's residents, and no one has seen you. I don't want to think that you're a spy or that you were kidnapped, since you don't look like the former, and as for the latter, the best shinobi sensors are stationed all around Konoha, who simply couldn't help but notice suspicious faces. So where are you? Did you hear some boy come to the dorm and tell Madame Rose that this is his apartment? I heard a girl whisper, gossiping about something with her friend. Now this is interesting, seriously, this has been going on for 5 minutes already and it is not known who will win. I did not listen to the end of the conversation and simply ran to the nearest dorm, promising myself to put the seal of the God of Thunder on the child. As I approached the dorm, I heard loud but incomprehensible voices actively arguing with each other. Later, the child's voice died down, and the street became deathly silent. I ran faster and finally saw the whole picture with my own eyes. On the balcony of the second floor of the dorm stood an old lady waving a rolling pin. Under the balcony, with his arms crossed and a dissatisfied but slightly confused face, was Naruto, and a group of onlookers crowded around the dorm. Naruto! I shouted, feeling myself getting angry. My voice must have sounded threatening, because the boy flinched and looked at me with a frightened look. And Minato's POV. Naruto nervously turned towards the voice to see the fourth Hokage looking slightly annoyed. However, his anger was clear as day. He had taken Naruto to the hospital, which meant he wanted him to stay there. Naruto, waking up and writing it off as a stupid illusion, had escaped from the hospital, practically breaking the Hokage's direct order. No wonder he was angry now. The kid closed his eyes and curled up into a ball, praying that someone would somehow dispel such a plausible genjutsu. Naruto, what are you doing here? Minato asked in a calm voice, placing his hand protectively on the child's thin shoulder. Just as the little boy was about to say something, a woman standing on the balcony intervened. Oh, Hokage-sama, how good that you were passing by. This kid is probably out of his mind. He said that he lives in my apartment, that you are not the Hokage now. But the third. He escaped from a mental hospital, right? And I would be very grateful if you refrained from such comments. Interrupting the woman, Minato firmly stated and, looking at Naruto, who did not understand anything, continued, don't run away anymore, I will find you anyway. Let's go, kid, you haven't recovered yet. Having picked up the child in his arms, the fourth disappeared from sight, only to reappear in the hospital. At the hospital a few minutes later. I don't want to. Don't. Writhing on Minato's lap, Naruto whined pitifully, looking with wide eyes at the approaching nurse, who was holding a syringe in her hands. You have to. It's just one little shot, Naruto, it's medicine. Minato said soothingly, holding the struggling boy in a lying position, his eyes pleading with the nurse to hurry. I don't need medicine. It will go away on its own, wounds heal quickly. I don't want. Naruto squealed as the needle confidently pierced his body. That's all, the nurse smiled, and Minato winked cheerfully at the boy who was pulling up his pants and grumbling discontentedly. Namake's cheerful mood was so infectious that a few seconds later Naruto's eyes were shining with childish joy and carelessness, and a sincere smile was on his face. Minato. The good moment was interrupted by Tsunade's voice, looking into the room. The fourth one turned around and, throwing Naruto a gentle smile, followed the head doctor. Well, what? Are the test results ready? Minato was the first to ask, to which he received a thoughtful look from Tsunade. The results are ready. And they are simply stunning. Minato. The good moment was interrupted by Tsunade's voice, looking into the room. The fourth one turned around and, throwing Naruto a gentle smile, followed the head doctor. Well, what? Are the test results ready? Minato was the first to ask, to which he received a thoughtful look from Tsunade. The results are ready. And they are simply stunning. I didn't believe it, so I decided that there was some kind of mistake and did the test again, to which I got the same result. I don't know how something like this could have happened, you'll have to sort it out, but I can only say one thing for sure. Tsunade suddenly fell silent and looked intently at Minato, not knowing how to continue. Well? The blonde waved his hand, urging the doctor to finish the sentence, since he liked waiting the least. In short, Naruto is your son, Konoha's best medic stunned the fourth, finally gathering her courage. There was a tense, deathly silence in the office for about a minute, and the Hokage stared blankly at Tsunade, trying to figure out if she was serious or just trying to play a joke on him. His brain absolutely refused to accept and understand such unexpected news, so Minato just sat in his chair, trying to comprehend everything and, making sure he heard correctly, choose the right words. What? What do you mean, this isn't a mistake? Namikaze croaked barely audibly when the first stage of stunnedness passed and his brain began to work. No. No mistake, Senju answered just as quietly but confidently and, noticing 1001 questions in the Hokage's blue eyes, she hurried to explain everything. As I already said, when the DNA results were ready, I didn't believe the results and did a repeat test, deciding to compare Naruto's DNA not only with Kushina's blood, but with yours as well. To be on the safe side, so to speak. But how? You know perfectly well that before having a child, Kushina wanted to reseal the fox. It's simply impossible. Minato, the percentage of coincidence is 99.9999%. This only happens between a child and his parents, the head doctor interrupted Minato, who was starting to get angry from not understanding the situation. You cannot argue with the results of the analysis. Even if it is difficult for you to accept and believe it, the fact remains a fact. Naruto is your and Kushina's son. Surprisingly, the fourth did not argue anymore or try to find a discrepancy or mistake. Instead, he simply stood up and, casting a tired look at the blonde from all this confusion, declared that he needed to think and figure everything out. Leaving the head doctor's office, Namikaze went to the Hokage Tower. After all, he still had several unsigned reports and this was a great opportunity to get distracted a little and get his thoughts in order. Minato, Kushina had already tried to attract her husband's attention for the 15th time, but he seemed to be on another planet and did not want to return to Earth. Finally, the mistress of the bloody seas got tired of talking to the wall. Namikaze Minato. The scarlet-haired girl screamed at the top of her lungs, rewarding her husband with a slap for good measure. Ow! Kushina, damn, that hurts. The blonde reacted instantly, rubbing the bump that had appeared on his forehead. I'm actually the Hokage, you shouldn't hit me. Drilling his wife with an offended look, Minato muttered childishly. The scarlet-haired girl sighed and handed him a cold spoon to at least slightly calm the pulsating bump. Having moved the chair closer to her husband, the girl laid her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes. For some time they sat in complete silence. Are you thinking about Naruto? She asked tiredly and, having received an affirmative nod, continued, yes, how is that even possible? Well, I mean, Kushina did not find the strength to finish the sentence. And why? So everything is clear, just not clear. Flashback. Well, what did Tsunade-sama say? Namikaze asked her husband who had just crossed the threshold of the house, does Naruto really belong to the Uzumaki clan? The girl was burning with impatience, but Minato only looked at her strangely and, without answering the question, went into the kitchen. It's strange, what's wrong with him? Kushina muttered under her breath, confused, since her husband had never behaved like this before. Blaming it all on the immense amount of paperwork, the girl followed the fourth and, putting on an apron, began to heat up the food. 15 minutes later. Minato, is something bothering you? The scarlet-haired girl asked with concern, looking at Minato's thoughtful face. You can tell me, you know. Together we'll think of something. She confidently raised her hand clenched into a fist and smiled. Namikaze didn't answer. You're already eating your 10th onigiri, what happened anyway? Kushina folded her arms across her chest, making it clear that she wouldn't leave him alone until she knew the truth. Minato sighed and, rummaging through the pockets of his famous coat, pulled out a small piece of paper folded in half and handed it to his wife. She took it and immediately began to read. With each line she read, her expression became more and more puzzled, and finally, she said quietly, in complete shock. Is that our true? Naruto. He's really our son? Minato nodded and sighed, oh. Kushina sat down on a chair, completely lost and not understanding anything. End flashback. I can't say what I'm feeling at all. Minato suddenly broke the silence, carefully stroking his wife's hair. When I found out about this, I was in a kind of stupor, and I still am now, but, at the same time, I felt joy. Yeah. I felt the same way, Kushina confirmed, no matter how, but he is still our son. Just think, we are parents. This time the girl smiled and her eyes sparkled with happiness. Naruto, he looks so much like you, just a smaller copy. Noticing her husband's interested look, she confirmed, yes. I visited him today, but he was sleeping at that moment. But the boy's face is oval like mine. The couple laughed. And yet I'm tormented by the question, who is he? No, we've already found out who he is. Where is he from? While I was sorting through mountains of reports, I remembered our meeting with him. Naruto then shied away from me and called me a ghost. And today, when I found him near the dorm, Madame Rose said that Naruto said that the Hokage is now the third. All this is very interesting. Maybe he's from another world? Kushina suggested innocently. Why not? Stranger things happen. In response, Minato rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Well, at least this theory has a right to exist, since it explains Naruto's words and reaction. Okay, it's too late now, we need to go to bed. And tomorrow morning you and I will visit Naruto and ask about everything, okay? Asked the fourth, already knowing what the answer would be. I was just about to suggest it. Kushina shouted, smiling. Naruto sat on the hospital bed, arms crossed over his chest and looking out the window with a displeased expression. He wasn't allowed to leave the hospital for a week, and the doctor threatened that if Naruto tried to escape again, she would tie him to the bed and leave him there for a month. Naturally, the kid immediately promised to stay put and not go anywhere, because the very thought of a month-long hospital arrest made his already disheveled hair stand on end. Even though Naruto had vowed to stay in the hospital, even an hour locked up inside seemed like hell to the restless boy, let alone a week. There were no entertaining games or magazines in the hospital, and the only entertainment for the little boy were the birds fluttering from branch to branch outside the window and humming funny melodies. Here one of the birds, the youngest one, apparently clumsily spread its wings and did something like a jump flight to another branch. Having reached the goal with its paws, the bird was happy and folded its wings too early, which caused it to lose its balance and hang on the branch upside down, as if parodying circus artists on a trapeze. All this caused Naruto, who was watching them, to smile, which was soon replaced by mischievous laughter. At that moment, there was a knock on the ward and, without waiting for an answer, they entered. Minato appeared on the threshold, accompanied by a rather cute girl, whose scarlet hair flowed beautifully down her back and shoulders and reached almost to her ankles. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 6 The door to room 311 creaked open, distracting the fair-haired child from his bird watching. Turning around at the sound, the child saw the fourth Hokage, who had dragged him to this terribly boring place, the hospital, and a pretty girl whose scarlet hair reached her ankles. Hello. Are you here to see me? Naruto asked timidly, immediately realizing what a stupid thing he had said, since the fourth and his companion would hardly make a mistake with the right door. But how was a small child, who was hated by everyone and everything a few days ago, supposed to react? No one had ever come to see him. Yes. Hello, Naruto, the girl smiled sweetly, walking into the room and sitting down on a chair next to the boy's bed. Minato simply stood next to his wife. Naruto nodded at the greeting and turned his blue eyes to the Hokage, going over all the possible reasons for his visit in his head. But he hadn't done anything wrong, so he was unlikely to get into trouble, at least, that's what the kid thought, until he remembered one ill-fated kiosk that he had so diligently painted 2 days ago and near which all the strange things had started. How are you feeling? Does anything hurt? Minato's calm voice brought the boy back to the real world. Excellent. Naruto answered automatically, jumping up sharply on the bed, after which he fell back down on it with a cry, holding his chest and coughing painfully. Shoo. You haven't recovered yet, so try not to make any sudden movements. Here, drink this, Minato said in a gentle tone, but one that did not tolerate objections, handing the child a glass of water. Naruto drank just a little bit, after which he calmed down and sat down on the bed with an embarrassed look. Sorry, the boy muttered quietly and, looking out the window, continued, I'm completely fine, that's true. My chest and right arm are just a little sore, but it will soon pass. All my wounds heal instantly, so there's nothing to worry about. And anyway, if something serious happens to me, no one will notice anyway. Naruto explained cheerfully, awkwardly scratching his neck with his hand. Even if you have fast regeneration, Kushina lowered her head and covered her eyes with her hair, quietly said, after which Minato and Naruto felt an evil aura. Even if that is so, you should not treat your health with such indifference. You are still a child, you have your whole life ahead of you. What will happen to your life if, Kushina could not finish, her eyes flashed lightning, and her hands clenched into fists. Don't you dare say something like that. Sorry, Naruto squeaked in fear, pressing himself into the bed, I just told the truth. I recover quickly and no one needs me. My parents died when the demon fox attacked Konoha. And the whole village disliked me for some reason. It's probably because of my eternal pranks. But I don't want to just disappear like that. At this point the trembling disappeared from the boy's voice, and his eyes lit up with determination. I will try very hard and I will definitely become Hokage. I will surpass all the previous ones. I can do it. You want to become Hokage, then? Minato said thoughtfully, raising his hand to his face. Well, I think you can do it. He winked at the blonde child, who looked up at him in disbelief. You really think so? You're not going to laugh at me? Naruto asked in shock, with a little hope in his voice, and Minato nodded cautiously. After this harmless gesture from the adult, something amazing happened. Instead of smiling, the child pursed his lips and lowered his head. His arms wrapped around his skinny little body, and his shoulders began to tremble slightly. Minato looked at his wife in confusion, trying to figure out what he had said wrong. Hey, kid, what happened? Everything is fine. Kushina reached out to the boy and gently took his chin, forcing him to look at her. Naruto's blue eyes turned red, and salty transparent drops streamed down his face. What are you saying? I didn't say anything bad, Minato said tenderly, putting his hand on the child's blonde head and ruffling his unruly hair. Naruto smiled weakly and sobbed again. No one has ever told me that. They all laughed at me, and I just can't believe it. Naruto shared, choking on tears, arigato. Instead of answering, Minato and Kushina, without saying a word, pulled the unfortunate child into a warm embrace, letting him cry out all the tears of pain and relief. When the baby calmed down a little, he realized how pathetic he must look now and, blushing, quickly slipped out of the embrace. Well, I already go to the academy, and now I'm sitting here and crying like a girl. Naruto grinned, wiping away his tears. Thank you very much, now I feel more confident. Naruto exhaled happily. Suddenly his good mood disappeared somewhere, and fear was reflected on his face. Holy shit, academy. Iruka-sensei will kill me. Exo! Naruto shouted, jumping out of bed and, not paying attention to the hospital gown, saying, Excuse me, I have to run. He ran out of the ward, leaving the dumbfounded adults sitting inside. Naruto. The fourth was the first to come to his senses and, running out of the room, began to catch up with the fleeing child. Come back. Unfortunately, Naruto never liked to follow orders and, seeing the fourth Hokage chasing him from behind, he increased his speed, running as fast as he could through the hospital. As the child was running past the head doctor's office, the door opened and Tsunade appeared in the hallway, holding a large stack of some papers in her hands. She appeared so unexpectedly that poor Naruto did not have time to brake and crashed into the woman at full speed. Many sheets of paper flew up into the air and began to gracefully fall to the floor. Naruto, throwing out a short sorry, got to his feet and rushed through the corridors again. Immediately after that, Minato came around the corner and, running around Tsunade, who was sitting on the floor and in a daze, disappeared from sight. Minato! How many times do I have to tell you not to run around the hospital? The best medic, having come to her senses, screamed, blushing with anger and clenching her hands into fists. Namikaze, who had clearly heard the blonde's angry tirade, got goosebumps and made a mental note to avoid the head doctor's office for a while. The fourth managed to catch the little fugitive only on the street, where he could safely use the teleportation technique, and where he did not have to constantly weave between people. Having picked Naruto up in his arms and tucked him under his arm, Minato, with a sense of accomplishment, walked back to the hospital, trying to ignore his son's pleas and resistance. When they got to Naruto's room, both blondes looked rather angry and tired. Minato put the boy down on the bed and measured him with a displeased look, in which, just a little, there was a splash of curiosity. "What was that?" Kushina asked the boy, crossing her arms over her chest and frowning. "You can't make any sudden movements, let alone run. The wounds might open up again." "I didn't mean to." Naruto whined pitifully, "Please let me go. Iruka-sensei will kill me if I skip class again." Minato and Kushina exchanged glances. Sighing, the fourth sat down on the boy's bed and placed his hand on his shoulder. After all, he had come here to check on Naruto and ask him a few questions that could shed some light on this confusing story. "Do you like rice balls?" Kushina asked the child without letting her husband say a word, taking out several neat rice balls from the small bag she had been holding in her hands from the very beginning. Naruto's eyes lit up with joy and he quickly nodded, taking one of the balls and immediately shoving it into his mouth. This is delicious," Naruto mumbled while chewing on the bun, for which he received a playful slap on the back of the head from the girl. "Don't talk with your mouth full, or you'll choke." Kushina threatened with her finger, smiling affectionately. Naruto only made a dissatisfied and impudent face, after which he began to gobble up the delicacy with even greater zeal. "By the way, who are you?" "I know Yandame-sama, but I've never seen you," Naruto asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Oh, right." Minato slapped his forehead, "We completely forgot. Naruto, this is Kushina, my wife. By the way, she, like you, belongs to the Uzumaki clan," the blonde stuttered casually. "Uzumaki?" Naruto said thoughtfully, "As far as I remember, I am the only one in Konoha with such a last name. And I have no relatives, since everyone died or perished long ago." The kid stared at Kushina in confusion, who felt uneasy from such close attention. "Well, when Minato and I got married, I became Namikaze, but that doesn't change the story of my origin," the girl smiled, closing her eyes. "Yes, probably," the child said after some thought, once again biting his sharp teeth into the rice ball. "Hokage-sama." "Call me Minato," the older blonde asked, interrupting the boy and smiling affectionately. Minato-san, what about the academy, and where will I live now?" "Some woman has taken over my apartment." Naruto asked, frowning in displeasure. Minato and Kushina smiled. "Well, first of all, don't worry about the academy. You're skipping classes on the Hokage's orders, and that's a very valid reason. Secondly, since you have nowhere to go, I suggest you stay with us. And thirdly, Naruto, have you seen anything unusual lately?" Minato asked, "Maybe something that scared you, or something you've never seen before, some kind of technique, I don't know." If you think about it," the boy thoughtfully rubbed his chin, then clicked his fingers contentedly. "Yes. I remember. Before I saw you, 5 guys attacked me. I remember, at the end, they made seals for the technique, and light appeared. It scared me at first, but then there were a lot of colors, and it was beautiful. And when the light disappeared, those guys were gone and you were passing by." Naruto chattered, smiling. "So it's true," Minato said barely audibly, but the boy's keen hearing still caught his voice. "What's true?" "Something's wrong." The kid blinked his eyelashes in confusion, looking at the adults with his blue eyes. "Nothing." Kushina smiled happily, waving her palm. Minato followed his wife's example and pretended that he hadn't said anything, and Naruto had imagined something. "No, I want to know." Naruto pouted, sitting comically on the bed. Minato winked cheerfully at the baby and ruffled his hair, and Kushina fished out of the bag the 7th rice ball and, without saying anything, victoriously handed it to Naruto, who was licking his lips. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 7 A playful ray of the sun rising into the sky deftly made its way through the light curtains and fell on the face of a sleeping boy, wrapped in a light blanket up to his ears. The little boy closed his eyes in displeasure and, having tossed and turned on the bed a little more, gave in, opening his sky-blue eyes. Having stretched sweetly and thrown off all the remnants of the desired, but cut short sleep, Naruto sat up in bed and looked out the window. It was already light outside and the birds were singing various melodies of their songs in turn. On the roof of the neighboring building, a March cat was purring his beloved serenade with all the force of his lungs, who could not be driven away by the furious screams of people, nor by the frying pans thrown at him, nor by threats to take Morka to another place or take him, the cat, to the vet. Young mothers were coming to the playground, pushing a stroller with mischievous, rosy-cheeked toddlers who did not want to sleep, and along the deserted streets, carrying backpacks on their backs, future ninja of the Hidden Leaf were hurrying to the Shinobi Academy. Looking at all this, the fair-haired child smiled a little sadly, because he was stuck in the hospital and could not enjoy life to the fullest. However, the sad smile soon melted away, and was replaced by a smug grin, promising Konoha more than one trouble. Today was one of the most significant days for Naruto. Tsunade Senju, the head doctor of the hospital, finally heard the boy's pleas and agreed to let him go into the wild. Therefore, the 4th Hokage and his explosive, but very sweet wife were supposed to come for him soon. Smiling to himself, Naruto looked at the small calendar again, made sure that the day of discharge had finally arrived and, throwing his hands up in a victory gesture and making his bed, flew off to the hospital shower on the wings of joy. Minato, what color would Naruto like more? Blue, or maybe he would prefer orange? Kushina asked her husband's opinion for the 100th time, looking at several overalls, pants, and shirts. How should I know? The 4th raised an eyebrow tiredly and, rubbing the bridge of his nose, continued thoughtfully, if we take into account the fact that you turned the baby's room into one continuous orange and already bought him a dozen orange t-shirts, I suggest coloring up the situation a little and buying a blue or green jumpsuit, Minato suggested, looking at the things, but in general, I would first ask him. So much oranges. Hey! Don't attack the orange color. The scarlet-haired girl was indignant, not letting her husband finish his sentence. Orange means. Yes, I remember. Orange is the color of your clan, the sun, joy, I think, and something else. Ruffling his head of golden hair, Namikaze finished his wife's sentence, but I just don't understand, what does the sun have to do with orange? It's yellow. At the last comment, Kushina clenched her fists and began to mentally count to 40, after which she calmed down and wandered to the neighboring shelves of clothes. After all, she loved Minato very much and could not stay angry for long over such trifles, and to start a showdown in the store would be at least strange and ugly. Having grabbed a couple of blue, green and, of course, orange things, the mistress of the bloody seas contentedly wandered to the checkout. Naruto was actively throwing off his boring hospital clothes, periodically looking out the window, hoping to see familiar figures. Finally, when the boy was completely ready to leave the hospital, a loud poof was heard, and the ward was covered in a snow-white haze. Naruto, in complete shock and bewilderment, pressed himself against the wall, thinking that bad people were going to attack him again. Tebane. How many times do I have to tell you not to use this technique with me? I can't breathe. Naruto recognized this voice right away, despite the obvious notes of irritation. Very soon the boy's guess was confirmed by a small silhouette breaking through the haze to the window and throwing it wide open. The white fog that had filled the entire ward instantly evaporated into the street, revealing a scarlet-haired girl hanging on the windowsill and greedily gulping oxygen, and a slightly agitated 4th Hokage. How are you, Naruto? Ready to move? Minato asked, deciding to distract his wife's attention from himself and thereby save his life. Oddly enough, this plan worked in Kushina, who a minute ago was ready to tear her beloved husband into thousands of pieces, calmed down and looked affectionately at her future son. That's right, kid, if you need anything, don't be shy and tell us, she awkwardly rubbed her neck and closed her eyes. Minato chuckled slightly, and Naruto looked at the girl in disbelief. He liked her from their very first meeting, but he simply wasn't used to attention from any adult yet. Unbidden tears welled up in the baby's eyes, and he covered his face with his sleeve, not wanting to show his weakness. Minato and Kushina looked at each other in confusion and a little surprise, wondering what they had said wrong this time. Naruto seemed to notice their misunderstanding, and so he hurried to explain. And no. Don't get me wrong, Databeo. I just. No one has ever treated me like this before and I'm not used to it, but, holy shit, anyway, well, I'm happy. Naruto rattled off in one breath, occasionally interrupting his speech with quiet sobs. The fourth Hokage and his wife exchanged glances and, without saying a word, pulled the crying baby into a warm embrace. The child froze in shock for a second, but the next moment, his entire tiny body pressed against the couple, showing that he trusted them unconditionally. It was the happiest moment in the entire life of the little now ex-Jinchuriki. After a good 15 minutes of hugging, the baby finally calmed down and, with reddened from tears, but very happy eyes, looked at the adults. They responded with affectionate smiles. So, are you ready to go home now? Minato asked, winking at his son and holding out his hand. The boy narrowed his eyes slyly in response and smiled at Namikaze with a smile that promised a lot of trouble. Finally, the blonde boy gave the fourth his hand, and he helped him get out of bed. A very unusual family left the ward, and soon disappeared from the sight of the working medical staff, going into a spacious house somewhere in the middle of Konoha. Naruto always dreamed of walking down the street like this with his parents, and it seemed that fate had decided to make concessions and give the baby everything he had been deprived of for 8 years since birth. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 8 Two blonde men and a scarlet-haired girl slowly approached a small mansion, located approximately in the center of the hidden leaf. Having passed through the gate, Naruto looked around in amazement. Near the house there was a garden, literally drowning in various flowers. The little ex-Jinchuriki had never seen such beauty in his life. Right next to the house grew a young sakura, in full bloom and slowly dropping delicate pink petals onto the cool ground. Next to the tree, a small pond was dug, in which one could discern the silhouettes of swimming fish. Well, the rest of the garden was full of timid violets, proud roses, important peonies, dahlias, tulips and daffodils, as well as other flowers, the names of which Naruto did not know. Kushina somehow got carried away with floristry, and this is what came of it, the fourth chuckled, noticing the baby's stunned face. What's wrong? The scarlet-haired girl responded. There was a clear challenge in her voice, but Minato simply ignored it and smiled at his wife with a disarming smile, which made the girl hesitate for a moment. Not knowing what to say. This is amazing, Naruto muttered barely audibly, looking around the garden with wide eyes. Really? Kushina immediately switched her attention to the boy. Well, as Minato said, I once got carried away with flowers and it seemed funny to me to plant them around the entire perimeter of the garden. There was a lot of trouble with choosing colors, but with the help of Yamanaka-san, everything turned out quite nice, the scarlet-haired girl happily chirped, glad that at least this little one shared her interests. Okay, this is all great, of course, but Naruto, maybe you should come inside already? I'll show you your room. Mother and son turned their gaze to Minato, who was standing on the threshold of the house, his arms crossed over his chest and his whole appearance showing that the boy would have time to admire the flowers later, but now there were more important things to do. Huh? Will I have my own room? Naruto immediately switched to a new topic, running up to the Hokage like a bullet and looking with his blue eyes into exactly the same ones, only wiser and calmer. Of course. The older blonde couldn't help but smile and ruffled the child's unruly hair. Naruto squealed happily and, without even waiting for the adults, rushed into the house. And where does so much energy come from? Although, he is still a child. I recognize Kushina. Namikaze shook his head, trying to find the fair-haired child inside the apartment, but, unfortunately, the baby was gone without a trace. Naruto. The fourth's wife called the blonde and, without waiting for an answer, began to search the house. Naruto. Come out. Naruto. Minato joined his wife, when he suddenly noticed disheveled strands of golden hair in the very corner of the room. The baby's body was carefully wrapped in a curtain and disguised by a flower pot. Aha! So, where is Naruto? I can't find him anywhere. Winking at Kushina and pointing his finger at the invisible man, Namikaze said thoughtfully, trying his best to play along with the kid. Naruto chuckled softly, but then covered his mouth with his hand. The boy didn't know that he had already been discovered and was unusually proud of his ability to hide. The Namikaze couple walked around for another 10 minutes, after which Kushina got tired of bending over and pretending to search diligently, and so she quietly crept up to the place where the young blonde was hiding, and with a victorious cry, "Aha! Found it," grabbed the kid in her tight embrace. Naruto burst into cheerful laughter, and since the sunny child laughed quite infectiously, very soon the entire Hokage family was rolling on the floor in fits of uncontrollable laughter. "Well, Naruto, we've had enough fun," Minato muttered, holding his stomach, which was aching from laughter, with his hand. "Now let's go, look at your room. If you don't like anything, tell me. We'll think of something." Naruto nodded obediently and, placing his small hand into the fourth's broad one, stomped up to the second floor of the building. Kushina, still laughing, followed the blondes. Cool. 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 Cool, the little blonde boy rejoiced, jumping on the large, spacious bed for about half an hour. The orange bedspread had long since slipped onto the floor, but the blonde boy cared little or nothing about it. When Minato and Kushina opened the door to the room, which from now on was rightfully called the children's room, Naruto simply stood there, not believing his eyes. There was everything he could dream of. A bunch of different toys, a TV, a spacious bed and a desk, which was so convenient for drawing, doing homework and all sorts of other sweet things. But most importantly, almost the entire room was orange. The kid couldn't even imagine this, because all the adults who could still listen to him or talk to him, normally, unanimously claimed that such bright colors only irritate the eye, and do not please it. Naruto honestly tried to understand the meaning of these words, but he could not. Orange. The kid almost idolized this color, and therefore such a surprise pleased him. Probably, more than anything else. What is he doing there? Minato asked his wife, looking up from the newspaper and listening to the cries of joy and the creaking of furniture coming from the boy's room. What difference does it make? The main thing is that he likes it. Smiled the scarlet-haired girl standing by the stove. A fragrant smell was coming from the pot, and anyone who entered the fourth's apartment now would say with confidence that something very tasty was cooking there. That's right. It seems he liked your craving for orange. Minato said cheerfully and immediately dodged the towel thrown at him. Don't attack. Orange color. Kushina said menacingly, but her look showed that she was only amused by the situation and didn't even think of getting angry. At this, the fourth sighed with relief and again buried his face in the Konoha news. Naruto sat on the carpet, holding the figurines of soldiers that he used to fight himself. He soon got tired of voicing the good and bad shinobi and waving his arms, so he moved to the table and picked up his pencils. The first thing that appeared on the blank sheet of paper was a red-orange sun, then white-blue clouds and green grass. Following the landscape, multicolored butterflies and a blonde blot figure appeared on the sheet, clearly denoting the artist himself. Naruto smiled and, knocking his teeth on the pencil, began to carefully draw two more figures next to him, yellow and red. He was probably drawing Minato and Kushina, and if the fourth Hokage somehow resembled himself, then his wife, despite the hellish efforts of the young blonde, was practically drowned, in her own hair and somehow raised one hand too frighteningly. Having assessed the picture with a critical look, Naruto drew a bouquet of flowers on Kushina's hand, and now the scarlet-haired fury was angrily swinging a multicolored broom at those looking at her. Now the boy was pleased with the work done and smiled happily. Naruto. Go have dinner. Kushina's ringing voice came from the kitchen. The blonde shuddered in surprise, but quickly came to his senses and, licking his lips, rushed to the lower floor. As Naruto ran towards the kitchen, his nose was hit by a delicious smell that the boy couldn't mistake for anything else. Ramen. It was definitely his favorite dish. Itadakimasu. Shouted the young fidget and, breaking the chopsticks, was about to grab the noodles from the plate, when suddenly someone's hand stopped him halfway. "First, eat something healthier, a salad, for example," ruffling the boy's hair, Minato said affectionately and, seeing the complete bewilderment in Naruto's eyes, explained, "Eating ramen on an empty stomach is not very healthy, despite its amazing taste. Save it for an appetizer." The blonde kid couldn't understand how anyone could eat anything other than ramen, but he nodded in agreement and obediently reached for the tomato-cucumber salad. Having licked the entire bowl clean of sour cream, Naruto looked questioningly at the fourth and, having received a nod, happily sparkling his eyes, began to gobble up his beloved ramen. The dinner was quite fun. Naruto talked about his dreams, hobbies, and the Namikaze couple listened to him attentively, smiled and encouraged him if the boy was suddenly upset about something. In general, this is the kind of family idol that Naruto dreamed of since childhood. Finally, dinner came to an end, and Kushina began to clear the table. Minato actively helped in this, and Naruto simply watched them and smiled happily. Very soon a yawn escaped from his mouth, and his eyes closed tiredly. Today was a very busy day. "No need to torture yourself, go to your room and get a good night's sleep," tearing herself away from the mountain of dishes, Kushina said affectionately, "Your pajamas are under the pillow, I hope you like them." Naruto's eyes lit up for a moment, but fatigue took over and the boy just nodded sleepily. Good night," the baby mumbled, rubbing his eyes and stomped towards the stairs leading to the second floor. "Good night, Naruto." Minato and Kushina left their work and, approaching the boy, gently hugged him and kissed him. The kid blushed and tried to portray a displeased look, like, "I'm already an adult." But it ended with all three of them laughing. "Come on, you need to rest," Minato said with a smile, ruffling Naruto's already messy hair. "I'm planning on taking you to the academy tomorrow, you don't mind, right?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. The kid immediately shook his head and said that he wanted to ask about it himself. "Well then, run to bed," the fourth ordered jokingly. Naruto nodded happily and disappeared on the second floor. The fair-haired child spun around in front of the mirror for half a minute, looking at his new orange pajamas, which had a picture of a very cute frog on them. Pleased with the new item of his nightwear, the boy ran around the room and jumped onto the soft bed, immediately wrapping himself in a soft blanket. In about half a minute, the baby, for the first time in a long time, slept peacefully, having forgotten all the past grievances. The bullying and bad attitude towards him remained in the past, a new life began, in which he was also needed by someone, where no one teased or offended him. A life that he could only dream of before. Well, dreams do come true, you just have to believe in them. Naruto was convinced of this from his own experience. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 9 Naruto woke up early. No, that's not it. He woke up very, very early, which was strange in itself. Sitting up in bed and stretching sweetly, the boy tried to find an explanation for such an unexpected phenomenon, but he couldn't, no matter how hard he tried. In the end, he got tired of thinking, and, having somehow made his bed, he trudged into the bathroom to take a shower and brush his teeth. Now the former Jinchuriki could not get used to the fact that his life had changed dramatically in this world and that someone needed him, so, having bumped into Minato in the bathroom, the little blonde almost screamed in surprise, but, fortunately, he quickly remembered what was what. Naruto? Wiping his face with a fluffy towel, the fourth raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Why did you get up so early?" And indeed, the hands of the small clock, standing timidly on the edge of the washing machine, showed exactly 5:30 a.m. The fair-haired boy whistled in surprise. Of course, he knew that he had broken all his records in getting up, but not by that much, and shrugged his shoulders somewhat embarrassedly. A minute of tense silence hung in the bathroom. No one knew what to say, and there was no topic for a possible dialogue as such. "Oh well. But the day will be longer, right?" The fourth winked mischievously at the confused child, rather clarifying than asking. "Oh yeah," Naruto nodded a little nervously in response and thoughtfully looked Minato up and down. It wasn't that he was at a loss in the Hokage's presence, no, quite the opposite, but there was something about this man that made the young mischief-maker think, and this happened extremely rarely with the boy. "The academy opens at 8:30. I think I'll take the day off today. If you want, we can go for a walk after breakfast. You still have plenty of time. Looking into the sky blue eyes, the same as his own, Minato suddenly suggested. The metamorphoses that took place on the child's face revealed the child's joy with all its giblets, so the fourth could not hold back a light chuckle, looking at how the boy tried with all his might to give his face an indifferently calm expression. I take it you agree? Namikaze asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear it from the child personally. Why yes. To make his words more convincing, the boy nodded with all his might, and the next second he winced from the pain that pierced his neck. That's right. Never make such sudden movements, it can cramp the muscles even more. The fourth immediately appeared next to Naruto and began to vigorously rub the child's neck, which made the latter literally howl. Minato understood perfectly well how strong the pain during a cramp could be, and therefore sincerely pitied the unfortunate man. But if the tense muscle is not immediately relaxed, the consequences may not be the best. Therefore, the adult continued to knead the thin neck of the blonde despite his screams and requests to stop. What's going on here? Kushina suddenly, there's no other way to put it, appeared in the doorway of the ill-fated bathroom, looking at her husband and son with genuine bewilderment. Moreover, the fact that the baby didn't stop screaming alarmed the scarlet-haired girl. Naru, the fourth began, but then fate took pity on the younger blonde and the cramp released his neck. The boy stopped screaming and hung helplessly in the Hokage's arms. Oh no, nothing anymore. Minato happily informed his wife, to which she gave him an uncomprehending look. Okay, the girl exhaled and shook the ladle she had grabbed when she went upstairs. It's good that everything is fine now. I don't understand why you got up so early. She poked the kitchen utensil at her husband, and then at her son, but go have breakfast already, or the pancakes will get cold. Naruto's tongue just stuck out at the statement about pancakes, and the boy rushed to the kitchen with the speed of a rocket, as if he hadn't been dying in the Hokage's arms a minute ago. Minato and Kushina could only look at each other and marvel at where the 8-year-old got such energy reserves. However, the fact that Naruto had Uzumaki Kushina's blood flowing through him explained a lot. I never listened to what the teacher said, that's probably why I can't do anything. But what can I do if all their explanations are so boring and monotonous that I fall asleep after 10 minutes of the lecture? Besides, no sensei kept me in their class for long. And then Iruka sensei came. He's really good. Naruto swung back and forth on the wooden swing, occasionally glancing at the fourth and noting his reaction to the modest story about his life. To the young blonde's surprise, Minato showed no signs of displeasure and did not mock him. The adult's eyes reflected only understanding and some sympathy. Most likely, it was because of this that the boy decided to open up his feelings to the fourth. Well, Iruka-sensei is very good. When he became my homeroom teacher, he didn't kick me out of the classroom because of my pranks, but ordered me to stay and started the lesson. It's just, here the kid hesitated and looked at Minato with embarrassment. From all his speeches and lectures, I only remembered that sensei's horoscope sign is Pisces and that he has several hobbies. At this point Minato couldn't help but let out a small laugh, and Naruto smiled awkwardly as well. As I see, you can't stand theory. Then what, practice? Minato raised an eyebrow questioningly and, not seeing agreement in the child's eyes, understood everything. No, I don't think so. I guess I'm just a worthless ninja with no hope of being recognized, the blonde stuttered. Well, that's too critical of a self-assessment, Minato drawled. I'm sure you'll learn everything yet. I will become Hokage. Even if I remain a student of the academy for the life of my life, I will definitely become Hokage. I will make everyone in the village recognize me. Naruto suddenly burst into such a passionate speech that he did not notice how the timbre of his voice reached its peak and passers-by began to look suspiciously at the violator of the silence. If you believe, your dream will come true, Namikaze smiled and gently ruffled the child's blonde head. Besides, I don't think that you can't do anything and that you don't have any abilities. You definitely have them, you just need to try hard and find them. You know, you really lifted my spirits, Naruto said, throwing a grateful glance at the Hokage. Rarely does anyone pay attention to me, much less listen to me. Thank you. You're welcome, Minato smiled and wanted to add something else, when suddenly a tiny alarm clock in his pocket began to ring, reminding him that classes at the academy were about to start and he needed to hurry if he wanted to send Naruto there today. What, is it time already? The young Uzumaki watched the Hokage closely as he set the alarm clock, and quickly realized that the clock showed about 15 minutes past 8. It would be bad if they were late. Yeah. Well, shall we go? The fourth one extended his hand to the boy, and when the child's palm grabbed it, he used his famous instant teleportation technique, and the blondes disappeared from the playground. Attention everyone, we have a new student. Naruto stood in the center of the class. Behind him stood his new teacher, Yumino Iruka, introducing him to the class. Speaking of the class, all the guys had known Naruto for a long time, but judging by their interested faces, they were seeing him for the first time. Not a blue blood, but I ask you to love and favor him. On this note, the teacher finished introducing him and pointed the boy to a free seat in the class next to a blonde girl. As far as Naruto remembered, it was Ino Yamanaka, the eternal rival of his adored Sakura-chan for their beloved Sasuke-kun. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 10 The first, well, almost the first day at the Shinobi Academy for Naruto began almost successfully. Old new classmates accepted him warmly and without indignation. Children looked at the new guy with interest and smiled at him kindly. Naruto, who had dreamed of making at least one friend his entire short life, barely held back joyful cries and the desire to rush through the class like a whirlwind and strangle all the kids smiling at him in sincere embraces. So, where should I seat you? The teacher thoughtfully rubbed his chin, looking around the audience for free seats. Okay, sit next to Ino for now. Iruka pointed to the seat next to the blonde girl, in whom Naruto recognized Sakura-chan's best friend. The prospect of being in Yamanaka's company made the young Uzumaki wince slightly. It wasn't like the boy had any problems with the girl in his home world. Ino treated him well, or maybe she just didn't notice the blonde's existence, but the young flower girl was known for her rather difficult and proud character, which is why Uzumaki didn't know how to communicate with her at all. Whatever. Everyone here behaves differently. Maybe if I can befriend her, Sakura-chan will finally pay attention to me. Having reasoned thus, the former Jinchuriki perked up and confidently headed to the second row, where there was an empty seat right next to the window. Sitting down at the wooden, and therefore slightly rough, desk, Naruto laid out the school supplies collected by Kushina on the table: a pen, a pencil, an eraser, a couple of notebooks and a pencil case. The young blonde especially liked the pencil case. A couple of green, funny smiling frogs were splashing merrily in the river and admiring the rainbow flaunting above the pond. The author of this drawing worked hard, and if Naruto did not know what frogs really look like, he would have believed in this image. Since childhood, the boy had a craving for the aforementioned individuals of the diverse animal world, and it is not entirely clear why. The child himself could not explain this fact, but as far as possible he tried to buy everything where he saw his charm, be it an item of clothing or something not very necessary, for example, school notebooks. But this was before meeting the fourth and his wife. Now that Naruto has a normal home, his own room and, most importantly, people who seem to really care about him, the blonde boy is determined to start studying hard and achieve his goal, to become Hokage. But this does not mean that his love for amphibians has faded into the background. Not at all. You may ask, how did Kushina find out about Naruto's passion for amphibians? They only met recently. The answer is very simple. Once, when Naruto was still lying in the hospital, bringing freshly baked pies with strawberry jam to the boys' ward, the fourth's wife found the child sitting in a rather uncomfortable position, but enthusiastically drawing these very frogs. That's when the red-haired woman went to the local market, where she bought this pencil case for her son. But let's not go into details and continue talking about frogs. Well, Naruto loves these green and bulging ones. So let him love them. Everyone has different hobbies and there's no accounting for taste, right? Hey! Naruto! Iruka-sensei's voice sounded like a bolt from the blue right in the blonde's ear. A very irritated Iruka-sensei. What else? The child, still not recovered from a mesmerizing sleep, lazily opened his blue eyes. Iruka-sensei? What are you doing here? Yumino's eye twitched nervously, but the teacher found the strength to restrain his anger and not to hit the negligent student on the head. Gathering all his irritation into a fist, Iruka, with a sadistic grin, deigned to answer the stupid question. It's obvious what I'm doing here. But what are you doing on your first day at the academy? The sensei hoped to slightly intimidate the student. But the tone of his voice sent shivers down everyone's spines, including Yumino himself. At first, Uzumaki looked at his teacher with confusion and a little fear, sincerely trying to catch the thread of the conversation and understand what he had managed to do when, it seemed, he had done nothing. Understanding came slowly, but it did come. The boy blushed deeply from the realization of his mistake and mumbled something similar to "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Out of the corner of his eye, Uzumaki glanced around the class. All the guys were looking at the new guy with undisguised curiosity and joy, and some weren't even trying to hold back their laughter. Naruto's cheeks turned even more red. "Bravo, Naruto, you proved yourself to be a clown on the very first day," the boy reproached himself with annoyance. "How shameful. But, on the one hand it's shameful, on the other, you shouldn't have slept on the very first day during the very first lesson." The rest of the school day passed more calmly. The teacher spoke incessantly and pounded the chalk on the board, explaining to the class the basics of the shinobi art. Sometimes he interrupted his fiery speech with furious gesticulations, apparently hoping to convey to the children with his hands what he could not convey with words. On the 5th round of the lecture on throwing shurikens, Naruto began to treacherously feel sleepy, but the boy heroically held on and even tried to suppress yawns. Suddenly, a small noise was heard next to him, and, turning around, Naruto came across a young Yamanaka with his gaze. The girl slightly moved away from the desk and, resting her head on her folded hands, languidly looked at the back of the overwrought sensei. Ino's gaze showed incredible boredom and indifference to everything that was happening. It seemed that a little more, and the girl would simply plunge into the world of Morpheus, but the young lady could not allow herself to do this. She may be popular among her classmates, but sleeping in class would definitely not add prestige to her. Therefore, all that the blonde could allow herself was to sprawl on the desk and stare blankly through the window at the tree swaying in the wind and the birds flying past. Naruto looked at the girl for a minute and thought about something of his own, until a sensitive kick in the leg brought him out of his daydreams. Returning to this sinful earth, Uzumaki felt Yamanaka's gaze on him. Raising an eyebrow questioningly and without changing her comfortable pose, the girl seemed to be asking him, "What are you staring at?" Naruto quickly shook his head, making it clear that he was just lost in thought and didn't need anything from Ino. The blonde just shrugged and again looked vaguely out the window. No matter how hard Naruto tried to wake up and concentrate on the teacher's speech, he did it with difficulty. With great difficulty. And curiosity gradually took over. In his world, Ino had always been a businesslike, proud and attentive girl, but here the pride and businesslike attitude remained, but the attentiveness clearly waved its hand and evaporated somewhere. There was no other way to explain Yamanaka's current behavior. After holding out for a couple of minutes, the blonde gave in and decided to clarify some points for himself. To do this, it was necessary to draw Ino into the conversation and slowly find out the necessary information. Although Naruto doubted that the blonde would even answer a single question, it was worth trying. Is Iruka-sensei always so, the boy thought, searching for a suitable definition, boring? He finally found one and looked at his classmate with curiosity. Always, but, the blonde looked at her nails appraisingly. Now he's not boring, just uninteresting. He was boring when he surpassed himself and put even the excellent student Hinata to sleep, not to mention the others. She tore her gaze away from her nails only to transfer it to a small pocket mirror and fix a golden strand of hair that had escaped from under a hairpin. "I see," Naruto smiled tensely. It seemed that Ino was not eager to continue the conversation, so the boy chose to remain silent. Why get into trouble? That's right, there's no need. Don't worry so much. The blonde suddenly decided to stop being sad and chat with the new guy. After all, the Hokage himself brought him. Surely the boy is somehow connected to him, and if so, it would be stupid to miss the chance to prove herself to the head of the village, because if she shows herself from the best side, who knows, maybe she will be given some very important mission, after becoming a genin, of course, after which Sasuke will pay attention to her, and Lobastea's rival will die of envy. Well, I remember we had a case. About 2 weeks ago, probably. Please leave your reviews. Chapter 11 Naruto had been walking around Konoha for an hour, cursing himself for the 100th time for asking Ino to show him the village, just in case, you never know. The blonde saw it as a chance to get closer to a possible relative of the Hokage and happily agreed. And now they were walking around Konoha, looking at its main attractions. But to be honest, they were just hanging out at Yamanaka's favorite stores, looking at and buying everything they liked. Or rather, only Ino looked at every little thing and dragged it to the checkout. Naruto valiantly decided to help his classmate take all the purchases home. Well, no one asked his opinion, as he decided. The girl wants it, the guy will do it, and it doesn't matter whether he wants it or not. This was the principle by which the young Yamanaka acted, rightly believing that this is how everything should be. Listen, this is already the 10th boutique you've dragged me into. I think I asked you to show me Konoha, not a chain of brand stores, Naruto tried to protest. If you don't like something, then look around the area yourself. Ino's green eyes flashed with displeasure as she opened the door to another store. This time all kinds of shinobi weapons. Uzumaki, who had opened his mouth to respond with a barb, froze in shock. He had never seen anything like it. This store was simply full of a variety of weapons, incredibly sharp throwing knives, whose blades shimmered beautifully in the sunlight, heavy spiked maces, trident kunai with a special teleport formula. It seemed that the fourth often came here, twin swords of various ranks, incredibly beautiful katanas, six-pointed shurikens, dangerous hammers and poison daggers. Here was everything that a shinobi could only dream of. Noticing the admiring look of her companion, the blonde smiled slyly. It seemed that Naruto had never been to such establishments and was now pleasantly surprised, which meant that for the near future he would see nothing but shelves with weapons. An excellent reason to stop his pitiful whining about shopping. Once they left here, they could safely go to the next street and buy the boots and blouse that she liked so much, which the girl had her eye on a couple of days ago. Oh. Ino. Hey. Naruto's ringing voice brought the daydreaming Yamanaka back to the sinful earth. What do you want? The blonde responded a little tiredly and irritated, unhappy that someone had so brazenly interrupted her dreams. No, everything is fine, ha ha ha. Naruto laughed fake. Not wanting to test Yamanaka's nervous system, the blonde decided not to tell her that she had been standing like a pillar in the middle of the store for a couple of minutes, disturbing other customers, and in her green eyes, one after another, appeared a soft blue blouse, then scarlet boots. Plus, the girl kept repeating something about how Lobostia will hang herself from anger and envy, and Sasuke-kun will notice true beauty. Yeah, if Yamanaka found out about this, not only Naruto would be in trouble, but also the other witnesses of what happened. The situation was defused by the elderly owner of the store, who approached the boys to ask if they needed his help. Naruto immediately switched to the old man, firmly deciding to buy some super mega cool weapon. Ino, shaking her head in displeasure, went to the rack with hairpins with a secret. This was the new brainchild of the crazy inventor of Konoha, which looked like an ordinary hairpin, but as soon as one of the legs was slightly turned, the hair ornament instantly turned into a deadly blade, the end of the blade of which was smeared with a fast-acting poison. With such a weapon, it was enough to inflict only a minor scratch on the enemy to send him straight to hell. Or heaven. It depends on your luck. Minato Namikaze walked along the slightly darkened streets of his native village, wondering where his hyperactive son could have gone. Flashback. About 20 minutes ago he returned home from work, where he was met by his worried wife. The reason for her worry was, of course, Naruto. The mischievous boy did not come home after classes at the academy ended. At first, Kushina decided that her son was simply playing with his new acquaintances, so she did not attach any importance to it, but now, when the clock showed 9 in the evening, and there was no sign of the child, the girl was seriously worried. She had already run to the academy several times, asked Irika and other teachers about Naruto, looked for him in various stores that could only attract the attention of an 8-year-old child. A couple of times she was lucky, and the sellers recognized her son in today's customers. However, he was with some girl. Yamanaka Ino, I think. Having calmed down a little that Naruto was not alone, Kushina continued the search, but they did not give any more results. Then she decided to visit Yamanaka, in the hope that the missing child would be found in the clan circle drinking tea with cookies. Kizu was a close friend of Kushina and a very kind woman. When she gave birth to a daughter, the fourth's wife looked at the screaming bundle with a bit of envy, because she and Minato were afraid to have children of their own, since a new vessel for the fox had not been found. However, the little fidget was not there either. Ino said that she had said goodbye to Naruto a long time ago, and he did not involve her in his future plans. Not knowing where else to look for her son, Namikaze decided to wait for her husband. He was supposed to arrive in 5 to 10 minutes. End flashback. And now the fourth Hokage was wandering through the streets of Konoha, trying to find his careless child. Of course, he could have used the seal he had left on Naruto's shoulder blade, but even the slightest burst of his chakra would have attracted the attention of the Konoha guards and the Hokage's regular bodyguards. He didn't really want to explain to them what was what. And Namikaze had enough enemies even in his own village, and they certainly shouldn't have known that the boy was his own son. For this simple reason, Minato tried to find the child without resorting to the art of shinobi. Naruto ran out of the small shop extremely pleased and happy, clutching something suspiciously similar to a piece of sausage in his fist. Stopping for a minute and not noticing anything unusual, the boy shrugged his shoulders and continued on his way. The evening was coming into its own, the sky was becoming darker, and the sun had long since turned crimson and was now barely visible over the horizon. It would seem that the little child should have been sitting at home and sleeping for a long time, but this was Naruto, and when did Naruto do anything like other children? Having run a couple more meters, the blonde stopped at a bush that had not been trimmed for a long time and began to quickly crumble sausage in his hands, whispering something under his breath that sounded like an animal's call. After a short period of time, the bushes finally began to move, and a dirty, shabby puppy crawled out of them. The little ball of fur was clearly several weeks old, it was too tiny. Naruto smiled happily, watching the dog greedily swallow pieces of liver sausage and lap up milk from a cracked plastic lid. But, as we know, everything comes to an end. And so the little dinner of the homeless dog came to its logical end. The feeling of a full stomach made the dog clearly cheer up and, in gratitude, began to lick the hands of his benefactor, barking awkwardly and comically. Naruto laughed happily at the display of such genuine love. "There you are." The fourth sighed with relief, putting his hand on his son's shoulder, scaring the hell out of the latter. Minato had already forgotten about possible enemies and had already folded the seals of instant teleportation, when he heard an extremely familiar laugh coming from somewhere in the nearby bushes. The source of the sound turned out to be his missing son, enthusiastically playing with. "What is that, a puppy? Don't scare me like that again." Naruto muttered reproachfully, after which he changed his anger to mercy. "Look what a fluffy miracle I found. Shall we take him?" Hope and supplication appeared in the childish blue eyes. Well, Minato hesitated, not knowing what to say. He knew perfectly well that Kushina would be against the appearance of a dog in their house. If it were a cat, then so be it, but a dog. However, he could not refuse Naruto. The boy had already been through a lot in the past. If his dreams were to be shattered into pieces now, okay, take your miracle. We'll somehow persuade the bloody habanero. Please leave your reviews. Chapter 12 What is this? Bloody habanero asked sternly, looking at her son, who was smiling brightly and holding something alive in his hands, on the threshold of her house. A dog, the fourth spread his hands, smiling innocently. Naruto also made a puzzled face, and the puppy, the cause of all the troubles, barked happily. I see it's not a crocodile, Kushina sighed tiredly, rubbing her forehead with her hand. Why did you let Naruto drag it into the house? The question, of course, was intended for Minato. He only shrugged his shoulders carelessly. What's wrong with that? Our house is big, one hairball won't make the space any smaller. His name is Snowball, Naruto said out of place, soothingly stroking the snow-white lump. I agree, Kushina continued, ignoring her son's remark, but what if this snowball grows into a huge snowdrift in a couple of months, what then? I don't know, the fourth admitted honestly, to which he received a disapproving nod from his wife. Well, we could make him a booth. He'll guard the house. My protective barriers cope with this duty perfectly well, Kushina grumbled, but the notes of discontent still died down. It was a sure sign that a couple more arguments, and the unshakable mistress of the bloody seas would give in. Well, she couldn't argue with Minato for long, she loved him too much, what can you do? Besides, the fourth continued the series of arguments in favor of a dog in the house. Naruto will never be bored, he will always be able to run around, fool around with his new friend. And then, you can't leave a defenseless lump on the street all alone, without food, water, to be torn apart by all sorts of scavengers? No need to embellish things here. Kushina exclaimed discontentedly, at first even beginning to feel sorry for Snezhawk. No one will make fun of him, not like you are making fun of me now. But this was a serious argument in Kushina's favor. If she decided that her nervous system was being tested for strength, then no one and nothing would convince her otherwise. And then the would-be chatterboxes would have to count only on a miracle. Seeing that his wife's mood had dropped from almost calmed down to one more word and you're dead, Namikaze could think of nothing better than to put on a humble face and, snatching the puppy from his son's tenacious fingers, turn him toward the street. Tears appeared in the boy's eyes, and Kushina, confused by such a quick victory, lost all desire to throw the furball out of the house. You're taking advantage of my kindness, Namikaze, she shouted after her husband, crossing her arms over her chest in an offended manner, after which she turned to Naruto. You'd better come up with a nickname for him better than Snowball. And one more thing, if you run off somewhere for a walk without warning again, I won't vouch for myself, got it? Habanero said the last part of the phrase rather threateningly, demonstratively raising her fist almost to her son's nose. He swallowed nervously and quietly squeaked, confirming his agreement with a convulsive nod. Kushina, apparently satisfied with this answer, headed upstairs, throwing out along the way, food is on the table. Let's go. She gave us permission, Minato commented on his wife's actions with a bit of mischief, handing the ill-fated puppy to his son. What will you name it now? I don't even know. Naruto put the soft lump on the floor. The puppy squealed happily and started playing with his young owner's laces. He's so small, the boy looked with affection at the fluffy miracle, which, standing on 4 paws, reached 30 centimeters from the floor. Kurama, baby. That's what I'll call him. Naruto told his father with a smile on his face, to which Minato grinned but didn't object. First of all, having fed Kurama and built something like a little housemat for him, the father and son finally had dinner and, terribly tired, wandered off to bed, since work and school had not yet been cancelled. Naruto woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't figure out what or who had made him emerge from his sweet dreams. After several futile attempts to see anything, fatigue took its toll and the boy fell onto the pillow, cherishing the dream of once again plunging into the kingdom of Morpheus. A quiet whining and grinding sound could be heard somewhere nearby. Fatigue screamed at me to try to fall asleep as quickly as possible, while curiosity insisted on finding the source of the sound. What do you think, one? The answer is obvious. Having overcome the desire to forget about everything and lie down to watch the rest of his sleep, Naruto got out of bed and looked around. His eyes had already gotten used to the semi-darkness, and now the outlines of the table, chairs, wardrobe and bed were clearly distinguishable. Speaking of the bed, the strange noise was coming from under it. Taking a flashlight from the bedside table, he was too lazy to turn on the light in the room. The blonde boy shone it under the bed and almost screamed. 2 glowing blue eyes were looking at him from the darkness. It was night in Konoha, and all the inhabitants of the village hidden in the foliage were sleeping peacefully. The only exception was the AMBU patrols, who monitored the safety of Konoha during the dark hours of the day. Everything was also calm in the Uchiha clan's estate. But only at first glance. Somewhere not far from the very exit to the village streets, a small figure flickered every now and then, which was huffing softly. Sasuke Uchiha, and it was him, had recently made it a rule to get out of his warm bed in the middle of the night and, climbing out through the window, quietly and carefully, so that, God forbid, his parents would not notice, to go to train. Exo, the boy hissed through his teeth when another shuriken hit the hardwood, flying just over the target. Throwing stars had always been a big problem for Sasuke, and it was unclear why. There were no such misses with kunai. To be honest, the young Uchiha should not have been bothered by this fact of his imperfection. Girls from the academy and not only followed him around, sometimes not giving him a chance to breathe a little air. The teachers praised the boy, vied with each other. How could it be otherwise? After all, Sasuke was the first among all the students of the Shinobi Academy in terms of academic performance. The boys also always took him into account. Although they disliked him because all the representatives of the weaker sex turned their gaze only to Sasuke. And his parents were very proud of their youngest son. So what's the matter? What's driving him to exhaust himself with training in the middle of the night when he's already number one in everything? The answer to this question was very simple. There was one person in the world to surprise and earn the recognition of whom the young genius of the clan wanted more than anything in the world: Uchiha Itachi, Sasuke's older brother and the best shinobi of the Uchiha clan, despite his rather young age. Itachi was only 16, but he was already the captain of the Special Forces ANBU squad. "I will definitely surpass you, brother Itachi," the boy whispered into the darkness, catching his breath a little, finishing throwing stars and moving on to hand-to-hand combat training. Karamu, having found his owner after wandering around the house for a long time, whined happily and crawled out from under the bed, poking his furry muzzle into the boy's knees. The latter sighed with relief. "Well, you scared me, my friend. Can you imagine what would have happened if I had screamed and the fourth and Aunt Kushina had burst into the room?" The puppy didn't answer, he just made scared eyes. "Yeah, better not to imagine that." Naruto laughed quietly and stroked Kurama's fluffy fur. "Hey, you still smell of shampoo." The boy buried his nose in the snow-white fur, inhaling the pleasant scent of strawberries. "You can sleep next to the bed, on the rug. I can't take you to my place. If Aunt Kushina finds you under my blanket in the morning, we'll both be in trouble." Naruto spread his hands in an apologetic gesture. Surprisingly, Kurama did not show persistence and obediently lay down on the shaggy rug next to his little master's bed. Please leave your reviews. Chapter 13 He immediately come back and finished his breakfast. Who did I tell? The angry cry of the bloody habanero was probably heard throughout all of Konoha. The residents looked out of their windows in concern, but upon realizing who was shouting, they immediately calmed down and continued getting ready, some for work, some for school, some for somewhere else. After all, over the past 2 years, such mornings have become commonplace for the Konoha residents. It's just that this time the fourth's wife broke her decibel record, and everyone was surprised. "I'm late." Not paying attention to his mother's disgruntled cries, Naruto grabbed a bag of sandwiches with his teeth, jumped out the window and rushed to the academy at full speed. Of course. Today was an incredibly important day for him: final exams and the end of the school routine in the form of Iruka-sensei's lectures, which make you sleep better than any lullaby. "Hey! Naruto!" Kushina still hoped to bring her disobedient son back and seat him at the table, but seeing his red jacket flashing 100 meters from the house, the woman finally resigned herself to defeat. "He never listens anyway." "Well, that's it." Karamu, wanting to cheer up his mistress, comfortingly poked his wet nose into her hand. The woman mechanically stroked the snow-white fur of her pet and, mentally wishing her son good luck on his exams, turned to the stove. Today she intended to arrange something like a celebration for the end of Naruto Academy, which meant there should be a lot of different sweets on the table, including very tasty, and most importantly healthy, homemade ramen, a special recipe for which Kushina was given by her late mother. "Well, finally. I thought you chickened out and decided to skip today's exams." Ino couldn't resist a taunt, noticing a tousled blonde head in the doorway of their classroom. "You won't get it," Naruto retorted, pulling back his eyelid and sticking out his tongue. "Has sensei announced anything yet?" The boy quickly sat down at his desk. After all, he was late, and was now trying to get his breathing back to normal, which had been out of order from running so hard. "Nope, Teacher Iruka hasn't entered the classroom yet." "You're lucky." Ino phlegmatically examined her manicure, then perked up and conspiratorially whispered, "Hey, did you find out information about the teams from your father?" "No." Naruto's gaze darkened slightly, and notes of great resentment appeared in his voice. Only the best hypnotists could get him to talk about this topic, and with truth serum, and that's not a fact. The young Yamanaka sighed heavily, once again building all possible scenarios in her head. However, she could not engage in this kind of prediction for long. Iruka-sensei entered the classroom and announced the beginning of the final exam. The class immediately stopped buzzing and pricked up their ears, listening to every word of the teacher. Whatever one may say, this was an important day in the life of every graduate, and no one wanted to repeat a year. I suppose you're wondering what's happened to our heroes over the last 3 years. For that simple reason, I'm going to backtrack a bit. Flashback. Naruto ran home after finishing his classes at the academy, hurriedly ate, changed his clothes and, calling Kurama after him, left the walls of the house as quickly as he had appeared in them. Kushina didn't even have time to complain. "You're late." Ino pointed her finger at the boy's chest reproachfully, meeting the blonde at the gates of her clan's estate. After a large-scale shopping trip and a couple of days at neighboring desks, the two became close friends and often played together. Just for a minute. Naruto tried to justify himself, making puppy eyes and putting on an innocent smile. "You're still late," Yamanaka disagreed, although not so sharply. "So, where are we going?" "I only have 2 hours, my mother, you see, urgently needed to replant all the flowers in our store, and she can't do without my help." Ino rolled her eyes irritably. "Yeah, no one wants to work. Especially at such a young age. Especially after classes." "I was thinking about going to the river." Kiba said that the water had already warmed up to a normal temperature. Naruto thoughtfully rubbed his chin and turned his gaze to his friend, waiting for her decision. "Okay," the blonde didn't keep him waiting, "I'll just run for a swimsuit and a towel." The girl's long hair whipped Naruto's cheek, and their owner had already disappeared into the house. 5 minutes later she ran out again, this time ready to go. Later, Naruto would remember this day for a long time with horror and shudder, despite the fact that after the event on the river, much changed in the boy's life. It all started when he and Ino had a bet about who could swim the longest against the current without using chakra. The bet itself was stupid, because the water was still cool, although the kids were only happy to have the opportunity to get away from the summer heat. Having ordered Kurama to sit on the shore and, for safety, having tied him to a tree, Naruto and Ino entered the water. They swam well enough, and therefore did not even think about such a trifle as a warm-up. Having set out to swim against what must be a fairly strong current, the friends tried their best to overtake each other, not paying attention to their rapidly fading strength. At first, everything went quite well. Naruto and Ino were keeping an equal distance from the intended finish line. However, soon the son of the fourth felt a slight tingling in his right thigh, but since the thirst for victory was stronger than common sense, the boy did not pay attention to it. Too bad. After a couple of meters, when Naruto and Ino reached the absolute depth of the river, the slight tingling was replaced by a furious pain, twisting his leg and driving him crazy. Balance was instantly lost, and Naruto, with a silent scream, went under the water with his head, not even having time to take a little air into his lungs. Ino, carried away by the desire to win the argument, did not notice how her friend fell behind, and therefore continued to swim until she heard Kurama's heart-rending bark. The dog seemed to have gone mad. He whined, barked furiously, stood on his hind legs and tried in every way to break free from the leash. Not understanding what was going on, Ino turned around and, not seeing Uzumaki behind her, was seriously scared. The current here was strong, and the depth was 3 or 4 meters, which is unsafe for a 9-year-old child. But the worst thing was the little secret of this river, which, alas, not everyone knew about. Somewhere in the middle of the current there was a fork. One path led further, calmly and without any surprises. The other made a circle and, reaching a small relief cliff, passed through it with bubbling waterfalls. Why waterfalls? It was not as dangerous as a real waterfall, because the height was insignificant, but this water path was best suited for extreme kayaking. There were too many underwater rocks and snags, which, if you got caught, you would definitely not get out unharmed. If Naruto had swallowed water and passed out, there was a good chance that the current had carried him back a few meters, right up to the fork. If so, there might be one less blonde on Earth. Ino understood this perfectly well, so she hurried to the shore. That way she had a better chance of catching up with her floating away friend. Naruto woke up in the central hospital of Konoha. Opening his eyes, he saw Minato, Kushina, Kurama and, apparently, his attending physician hanging over him. Ino, although she asked to be allowed to stay, the Namikaze couple sent her to her parents, because the girl was in severe shock and she could not worry. The doctor, very happy about something, hurried to leave the ward, leaving the little patient alone with his parents. That's when Naruto, afraid that the brainwashing would begin, hurried to apologize and, without realizing what he was saying, called Minato and Kushina daddy and mommy. The Namikaze couple exchanged glances and nodded to each other. A couple of days later, when Naruto was discharged from the hospital, Minato and Kushina officially adopted Naruto. Of course, they knew that the child was their biological son. They even managed to convince Naruto of this, without confusing the baby with various transitions between worlds. So the boy after the incident on the river was probably the happiest on the planet. Of course, the parents were found. Even if they did not admit it right away, but still. Yes. But the brainwashing and long lectures with all their consequences still took place. Naruto was even put under house arrest then, so that he would not dare to risk his life anymore. After the boy officially became the son of the fourth Hokage, the villagers' attitude towards him changed somewhat. Almost everyone smiled politely at him if he ran through the streets. His classmates began to respect him more. The female half of the class split into two fan clubs, the genius of the Uchiha clan and the son of the fourth. In general, life took on new colors. It's not that anyone had been hostile to him before, no, well, in this world, it's just that now there was a little more attention. Naruto sometimes even got angry about this. Especially if people's feelings were feigned, it is unknown how, but the boy easily distinguished falsehood from truth. With Ino, their relationship remained friendly, and they still ran around Konoha together after school. Naruto still liked Haruno Sakura, and he did not lose hope of winning the heart of the girl with pink hair, and she, in turn, did not take her adoring gaze off Sasuke. Ino continued to compete with Lobasta about the Uchiha, but this time purely out of female mischief and unwillingness to lose. As for Naruto and Sasuke, their friendly relationship did not work out. They were always arguing. Always and for any reason, they often fought and simply competed in everything and everyone. In such an environment, 2 more years flew by unnoticed. The students of the academy turned 11 or 12 years old, which meant that they had very little time left to study. The final exams were approaching with the Third Space War, and the future Genin spent the last weeks of their school life in diligent and exhausting training. No one wanted to lose face. End flashback. So, let's begin the final exam. Yumino Irika loudly addressed his students. It consists of 4 stages. 1. Transformation technique. 2. Cloning technique. 3. Throwing kunai and shuriken. 4. Sparring. Each stage is held on a separate day. The results will be known immediately. On the spot, in short. Upon successful completion of all stages, you will be given Konoha protectors, after which teams of 3 genin will be distributed. Anyone who does not pass at least one stage will be left for the second year. I wish you all good luck. The teacher moved away from the microphone, gesturing for the graduates to go to the next room, where the first stage of the exam was to be held. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 14 As you all already know, I believe the final exam will be conducted in 4 stages. 1. Transformation technique. 2. Cloning technique. 3. Throwing kunai and shuriken. 4. Sparring. Upon successful completion of all stages, you will be given protectors with the Konoha symbol and awarded the title of genin. Afterwards, I will announce the list of teams, 3 graduates in each, and a personal mentor for each of them. I wish you all a successful completion, because whoever does not pass at least one stage will be left for the second year. After the teacher's speech, a buzz went through the rows of the class. The graduates shared their impressions.